There are so many questions online regarding how the narcissist feels, what they're going through, and why they behave the way that they do. So I decided to address this today and explain my version of understandings from different research along with books that I've read. We want to know because often, whether you are male or female, there is a feminine side to all of us. And that feminine side seeks to protect. The protector side of self wants to nurture what's broken in another. A mother will tend to be the one who puts a band-aid on the child's scrape, for example. However, in the case of a child who grows up in a healthy and loving environment, since the child experienced nurturing, they're going to know and implement nurturing self when need be. So anyway, as per the narcissist and understanding the behavior, the narcissists that I'll be referring to today are those who became narcissists due to trauma and not the narcissists who adopted the behavior due to being spoiled rotten. Mind you, if there's anything I'll say about those types is that although they may not have been traumatized, they were programmed by their caretakers. You as the codependent were programmed by being told or shown time and time again that you were not of value, and so you grew up believing that. That's the programming. It's the same thing for the spoiled brat that was told time and time again that they were special and better than anybody else. And in my opinion, I imagine if there's a narcissist that has a chance of becoming self-aware, it may possibly be those ones, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, let's get to the core of the traumatized narcissist. These scientists from the London Globe University worked with a research center for children's mental health, also in London. The research center is called the Anna Freud Center. Now, what they discovered was that children who experienced turbulent and violent upbringings had two areas of the brain that increased when shown images of people who exhibited anger in their faces. The first area was the anterior insula, which regulates the introduction of subjective feelings, subjective meaning based on their personal feelings or opinions. The anterior insula is the part of the brain that's involved with empathy, compassion, and interpersonal phenomena, which is the interaction between people. It's how people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by the actual or imagined presence of others. The other area of the brain is the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that detects threats. It processes fearful and threatening stimuli. So for those of you who are suffering from CPTSD, which is most for those of you in long-term relationships with narcissists, get this. The MRI scans that they did in these studies showed that the brain of the children that were exposed to violent family upbringings were the same as the scanned brains of soldiers who had been in combat and also exposed to violence. The pattern of heightened activity was the same in both parts of the brain, and you can find this information on the n.i.c.a.b site. Both children and soldiers developed hyper-awareness of danger in their environment. And since the amygdala and the anterior insula are both responsible for emotions, it stands to reason that it is also the area where anxiety takes place and can develop later in life. Now, Terry Reels that I mentioned in the beginning is an author, or did I even mention him? I don't even remember. Anyway, he's an author of many books, such as I Don't Want to Talk About It or How Can I Get Through to You? He is a family therapist with a master's in social work and also works independently. He talks about the part of the self that, as he states, doesn't get enough recognition, but is just as important as the part of self that we normally work on therapeutically. We call the inner child or wounded child for those of us who experienced neglect or other forms of unmet needs. Let's take a look at his work here. The adaptive child. The adaptive child is the part of the self that is trying to keep the hurt inner child safe. The adaptive child tries to mimic an adult. Children can be strong and flexible, so when their survival needs aren't being met, they're going to adapt in a way that can work for them. They'll take on another behavior in order to get what they need, in order to survive. That can look like withdrawal, and being sullen, pouting, to taking on a bully persona like yelling and being aggressive. He also states that the adaptive child is more often than not lacking in vulnerability. They will be inflexible and unyielding. It's black and white thinking, and they are also often perfectionists. The adaptive child, becoming an adult, then becomes irrational in relationships, particularly when it comes to intimate relationships. Because of the scars, the adaptive child, now adult, has now stepped in to ensure that they will no longer sustain any further injuries. And so rather than being in a healthy relationship that focuses on cooperation and teamwork, they take the attitude of me versus you, which explains the responses to their sensitive triggers and how combative they become when they feel threatened. They are in protective mode. Here we have an infographic that will help you understand. We have the child that was wounded by abuse or neglect, a young, vulnerable, possibly pre-verbal child, meaning the child used to be more talkative or more loving in their communication. Child is often overwhelmed, yet longs for connection. Most of the trauma work usually focuses on the wounded child. And it's not usually the wounded child that brings dysfunction into the adult relationship. Next, the adaptive child, a child's version of an adult that developed to protect the wounded child. The adaptive child becomes maladaptive. They are often perfectionists, and they're harsh, and they can be extremely demanding and unforgiving. They see the world in black and white. Often it is an older child, unable to learn skills, and I imagine this one refers to social skills. Cares only about self-preservation, views intimacy as a threat, not only reacts to aggressor but identifies with aggressor. And lastly, we have the functional adult. The functional adult makes thoughtful decisions, mature, thoughtful nuances, meaning they'll have subtle appealing qualities or aspects of their character, and they are forgiving, and they're based in the present. The functional adult understands imperfection and ambiguity. They can see different sides to a story, for example. They make sense of trauma and its impact on relationships. They are adaptable. The functional adult can learn and use new skills. Let's take a look at more of what he has to say here. And by the way, I'm not promoting him here. Quote, "The essence of narcissism is the interplay of shame and grandiosity filtered through external narcissistic supply," unquote. They lack in self-love, and so you supplement it. Everything is based on the external, which he categorizes into 3 categories. Number 1, performance-based esteem, which is based on what they can do. Number 2, other-based esteem. I don't have self-worth unless you think that I do, or I do if you have worth, if it benefits them. Number 3, attribute-based esteem. I have worth because of what I have. Example, vehicle, house, money, a partner. So basically the narcissist is enamored and addicted to the image that they've created, and they're more than likely not going to give that up. So you can feel bad about this adaptive child who has chosen to use narcissistic characteristics to the extreme to control his world, which involves you being miserable and refuses to change. Or you can take a look at the functional adult that you are and make thoughtful decisions like healing your own wounds. You can use your own forgiving nature to forgive self for believing all of the nonsense that's been indoctrinated in you. And you can make sense of your own trauma and how it's impacted your life. Both you and the narcissist have experienced trauma. It's up to each individual to decide whether to get help or not. We all have free will. The narcissists, they opt for no change, most of them. So it's out of your hands. It's out of your control. You, however, can make a choice to heal your traumas and take control of your life rather than have the narcissist control you. I knew I was healed when I no longer felt that, that shame wound that we all feel without knowing what it is that we're supposed to even be ashamed of. That was completely gone. And I've since been tested on more than one occasion with narcissists showing up in my life, and believe me, I can smell them a mile away. And for those of you who aren't ready, I definitely get that too. But I have a free hypnosis MP3 on Gaining Your Power Back that you can download, just scroll down to my homepage and you're going to find it. And again, the link is down below. And if you decide to do this, you're going to need to, I recommend anyway, do it 2 times a day for 3 weeks. Because it has taken many, many times and days and months and years of experiences to come to believe that you weren't enough. So in order to reprogram the old programming, it's going to take a few rounds. But like Louise Hay used to say, I am willing to change. So on that note, I bid you farewell and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.